Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to get you completely prepped with the Linux fundamentals you absolutely need to know. If you've got a technical test or a big interview coming up, this is for you. So, you've got a Linux interview on the calendar? Or maybe a big certification exam? Perfect. You're in exactly the right place. We're going to cut through all the noise and really zero in on the core stuff that you're almost guaranteed to be asked about. All right, let's get into it. So here's our game plan. First off, we'll talk about the different flavors of Linux, the distros. Then we'll dive into how Linux actually organizes all your data with something called the ext file system. After that, we'll do a quick run-through of the installation process, and to wrap it all up, we'll have a little lightning round of interview questions just to make sure it all sinks in. Okay, so let's start with the most basic, foundational idea. Linux isn't just one single thing. It's really a family of operating systems. We call them distributions, or distros for short. And understanding the two main types is absolutely critical. Here's the easiest way to think about it. Core distributions, they're your all-purpose toolkits. Kind of like a Swiss Army knife. They can do a little bit of everything really well. Specialized distributions, though, they're more like a surgeon's scalpel. They are designed with incredible precision for one and only one specific job. So when we talk about core distros, we're talking about the heavy hitters. You've got Ubuntu, which is probably the most famous for being user-friendly on desktops and servers. It's actually built on Debian, which is legendary for being rock solid and stable. Then in the corporate world, you've got Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or RHUL, and its free-to-use cousin, Rocky Linux. And you can't forget Fedora, which is kind of the cool, cutting-edge playground where a lot of new features get tested out before they make their way into Red Hat. Now, on the other side of the coin, you have the specialists. Here, it's all about the mission. Kali Linux, that's the go-to for cybersecurity pros doing penetration testing. Arch Linux is for the power users, the people who want to build their entire system from scratch. Raspbian is built specifically for that tiny little Raspberry Pi computer, and yep, believe it or not, the Android on your phone is a specialized Linux distribution too, tailored just for mobile devices. All right, so we've covered the different operating systems. Now let's look at what they're all built on top of, the file system. Just think of it like the library's card catalog, or the blueprint for a building. It's the system that dictates how Linux stores, finds, and manages every single file on a disk. The most common file system you'll run into is the extended file system, or ext for short. And it's really evolved over the decades. It started with X2 way back in the early 90s, then we got X3 in 2001, and finally X4 in 2008. And X4 is pretty much the gold standard today. Each step in that evolution brought a massive improvement. Okay, if you remember one word from this section, make it this one, journaling. This was the absolute game changer. Imagine the system keeps a little logbook. Before it actually writes a change to your hard drive, it first jots down what it's about to do in that logbook. So if your computer suddenly crashes or the power goes out, when it boots back up, it can just read the logbook, see what it was in the middle of doing, and fix any half-finished business. It's what stops your data from getting scrambled. So here's how that whole evolution looks side by side. XE2 had no journaling at all. It was fast, but pretty risky. Then X3 comes along, and boom, we get journaling. That was a huge leap forward for reliability. And then X4 took that solid foundation and just made it better. The journaling is faster. The maximum file size jumps up to a whopping 16 terabytes, and it's built for high performance. It's that combo of reliability and performance that makes X4 the default pretty much everywhere now. Okay, enough theory, let's get a little more practical. We know about distros, we know about file systems, so how do you actually put it all together and get Linux onto a machine? Let's walk through the main steps of a typical installation. No matter which distro you're installing, it almost always boils down to these 4 stages. First, you have to partition the disk. This means you slice up the hard drive. You'll make a root partition for the operating system, a swap partition, which acts like extra RAM, and, here's a pro tip, a separate home partition for all your personal files. That way, if you ever need to reinstall the OS, all your documents are safe on their own partition. Step 2, you choose that file system, which, as we know, is probably going to be ext4. Third, you set up the bootloader. That's the tiny program that kicks everything off. And last, you create your user accounts and get your network connection working. So how do you kick this whole process off? Usually, you'll use a live USB stick. What's cool about that is it lets you test drive the whole operating system without installing anything. Now, the installer itself will come in one of two flavors. You'll either get a friendly graphical installer, like on Ubuntu, that holds your hand through the process, or you'll get a text-based installer, which you'll see on servers or on distros like Arch. It looks old school, but it gives you total granular control over every single set. All right, you've been soaking all this in, now let's see what's stuck. We're gonna do a quick rapid-fire Q&A just like you'd get in a real interview. This is gonna help lock in those key ideas. Ready?
Okay, first question, a real classic. An interviewer wants to know if you're familiar with the landscape. What are some of those big general-purpose distros? And there it is. That's the list you want to have ready. Naming Ubuntu, Debian, RHEL, Rocky Linux, and Fedora shows you know the major players, both on the community side and in the enterprise world.
Next up, a question about the file system. What's that crucial evolutionary line that separates these three versions? That is the perfect answer. It shows you understand the progression. The jump from ext2 to ext3 was all about one thing, adding journaling for safety. And the jump from ext3 to ext4 was about making it faster, bigger, and better. Now for the follow-up, the why question. This is where an interviewer checks if you really understand the concept, not just the word. What's the real-world value of journaling? Exactly. It's your data's insurance policy. It's the safety net that kicks in when things go wrong, preventing a simple power outage from destroying your file system.
Okay, here's a detail-oriented question, the kind you might find on a technical exam. They want to see if you know the specs of the modern standard. 16 terabytes. That's the number. It's a simple fact, but remembering it shows you've paid attention to the details and you know why ext4 is built for today's massive data needs.
So there you have it. You've got the essentials down cold. From distributions to file systems to installation, you are ready. So the only question left is, where do you go from here? Which one are you going to master first?